Previous guest writes the first question. I will turn it over to you and surprise both of us with it.
Thanks, Paul. It's going to be interesting. Let's see. Great question.
Good.
If you went back in time and had to choose a different career, what would that be? Wow. If this question was posed to me in 2014 when I retired, I don't think I would have had an answer. 10 years after retiring, I'm very clear on what it would have been. And I probably would have been a lifeguard. I lifeguarded through high school. I lifeguarded a little bit during college and after college, and I ended up lifeguarding right before I went to officer candidate school in the Navy. I loved it. There was service and purpose and great people, and there's a tribe, and it's outdoorsy. I love the water. It was a wonderful fit for me, but it wasn't to be considered a career at that stage in the late 80s, at least for me. So I signed up for officer candidate school, was lucky to get in, was commissioned in 1986, and went to the Middle East pretty much immediately after my conditioning. And
before we go deep into that, you just made a comment about lifeguarding wasn't looked at as a career. Couple components on that. One, was it not looked at as a career by your family, mom and dad type deal? And two, was it not? Because
it's a great question.
I'll leave it with that part before I go to the next one.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think I viewed it as a viable career. I was raised in a Navy family, so I spent my entire childhood as a Navy junior. My father served 27 years. And so we moved a lot. We learned a lot through the places we lived in. I saw him as a career naval officer. My mother was a career nurse. There were careers. Lifeguarding never popped up as a career thought. It was a summer job. It was pools. It was lakes. It was oceans. It was service, but in a part-time capacity. So it never really factored. They didn't push, you have to be a careerist. My father was an outdoorsy guy. He was really a well-grounded adventurer, and a Naval Academy grad, a Sea Scout when he was younger, an Eagle Scout. So he was a pretty accomplished kid who jumped into Annapolis and went on with his career and was a wonderful dad and outdoorsman for us. He had 3 sons. Lots of fun as young kids. And he always told us, and was consistent throughout our lives with him, he passed away when he was young, was if you're looking for purpose in your life and you're looking to serve, and you want to be surrounded by great people and have a good mission with some adventures, the Navy or the military is absolutely a wonderful place to be. Never pushed his kids to go to Annapolis, never pushed his kids to go to the military. Very open, which I now appreciate much more than I did back then. So the idea of lifeguarding was never looked at as a career, but he wasn't saying what a career was either. But as a young kid, you're impressionable and you watch things. And you see a mother who's passionate about nursing and doing nursing. You see dad who's a patriotic guy who loved being a naval officer and leading people and meeting his mission. Those were your role models. So I never considered lifeguarding as a career. And I jumped in the Navy. I ended up being a regimental lifeguard at Officer Candidate School in Newport, Rhode Island. They needed somebody to do that. And I raised my hand and said, I'd love to do that. So for 4 months, I didn't have to stand traditional watches. I just went to the pool every morning at 5 o'clock to teach people how to swim that needed to learn how to swim in 4 months so they could pass the test. And
where did the interest in lifeguarding come from? You mentioned your mom being a nurse, but
we moved every couple of years as kids, and we were always living in coastal places. So we lived in the Philippines, we lived in Virginia Beach, we lived in California. We were constantly on the road, and we were near water. And so we were raised with water. We were also raised in the mountains and being outdoors with dad and mom. But the water was really the essence for us. We're all good swimmers. I learned I could make money in high school if I was a Red Cross certified lifeguard, and did that, and it was fun. For me, at the time, it served a mission purpose that I didn't even know existed. Right? It was a job. It was a fun job. You're outside. They give you a whistle. There's some authority to make sure things are safe with kids and adults and teach swimming. All great stuff. For me, it was a paycheck.
Primarily pool lifeguarding, or was it ever ocean?
Ocean. Started with pool, both. And the ocean lifeguarding is a different beast, and that's fantastic. That's where I would have had a career. And I didn't live in San Diego back then. We were back on the East Coast. So lifeguarding was a seasonal thing. I see these young men and women out here. It's a full-time gig for them, and I get more jazz than they do. So lifeguarding would have been a thing to give serious consideration to because it is in total alignment with who I am, right? If that makes any sense. But back then, you weren't talking about alignment. You weren't talking about fulfillment. You were looking at what is the career that's going to get you to place X, and that place X might not even been the right spot for you, but you drove to it. And if you had a good work ethic, and if you had caring family support and parents or partners, you could thrive moving towards that. I'm not sure we looked at the X with much validation that that was the right place to be, but we all worked towards it. And for the most part, I think it served really well. I went to the Navy because I'd worked in a family business out of college for a year. And it was an Italian family out of Manhattan. And after a year, I was let go unexpectedly because the family didn't want to share any of the family business. And I found myself unemployed.
What kind of business was it?
I'd rather not say.
Okay.
Small mom and pop type of shop in the family and a legitimate business. And I found myself completely unemployed, unexpectedly. No savings, other than I had a little savings account. And I had to make a decision. Do I go home? Do I start fresh? What am I going to do? I went back to lifeguarding. I lifeguarded. And while I was lifeguarding, I took the officer candidate exam. So that was sort of a transition point for me that I fell back on something I was really good at, comfortable with, and I enjoyed. And then jumped into officer candidate school and expected to do a few years in the Navy because it'd be a great maturation time and it wouldn't hurt. It was something I was comfortable with because I grew up in a Navy family and ended up doing 28 years. Right?
I'm
Crazy.
Tease it right there with the question of prior to being fired from that job, you're a year out of high school, you decide to put your packet in for OCS. Had you considered the military ever at a point to that time?
No, it's a great question, and no, I hadn't. I went to a liberal arts college outside of Philadelphia where my dad and mom had a duty station, and it was a Catholic college. It was Allentown College of St. Francis de Sales. Now it's DeSales University. It's much bigger. Small school, predominantly folks from the tri-state area. Friends to this day. I spent 4 years away from home, away from the military, with regular folks, as I call them, regular folks who had come from different places with different industries that their parents had worked in, not military. And I had a total rockin' 4 years. And to this day, there are life mates there. I played soccer, and I was part of some clubs, and the school was probably 1,000 kids. And that formulated for me community that wasn't the military, which is a wonderful community. So I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about my friends. I learned a lot about life outside of any infrastructure that was Department of Defense. So I gained a lot of independence there.
With all those years growing up in the Navy, moving around with your parents, you mentioned 2 other brothers, so you're one of 3?
2 younger brothers.
Of the brothers, or from your dad's perspective, was there ever a point when you guys got to a certain age where it was the family and I'll call it the solidity of keeping you guys in the same school and letting you kind of establish your roots? Did that become an important thing for your dad?
That was a very important thing for my father. And he never served in the Washington, D.C. area because he kept us in the Virginia Beach area so we could get through most of our school. Excuse me. So he definitely factored that in as a primary factor for family dynamic.
So do you consider Virginia Beach hometown?
No, because we left there my freshman year of high school to southern Jersey, where my father had a tour of duty in Philadelphia. So he would commute in. Mom would work at the local community hospital as a nurse. And we went to schools in South Jersey, exit 4 on the turnpike, for those that know the area. So that's sort of our home base during that time phase of your growth and development. Lots of adventures and stuff before that. So that was the boys going to high school. And then from there, we launched in our different directions while my father continued on with his Navy career. And then he retired in 1989. I was commissioned in 1987. So we had a 2-year window when we were serving together. And at the time, I didn't value it.
Did you get close as far as duty stations or anything?
No, this is sort of an odd thing. Gosh, I didn't even think this would come up, but it's coming up. So I purposely went to where my father had never served because he was still on active duty. Yeah.
Was it more to go where he had never been or be where he wasn't?
The latter. Yeah.
To
create my own independence in a place where there's no shadow, right? Which is sort of odd because he passed only 4 years after retiring. And now I look back like, damn, I should have spent more time with him.
You're not the only one who probably regrets the lack of time that they had with their father.
Yeah.
I will definitely put myself at the top of that list, especially what I call the time as an adult and really able, hopefully, if you're able to transition to being more friends than parent-child.
Yeah. Yeah, God, I didn't value him for what I should have, and he was super. And we miss him to this day. It was 31 years ago. So I went to where he wasn't, which was a blast because I was able to create my own sense of purpose within this service realm and my own relationships and my own what I call little successes as a junior officer, right? It was confidence building. And then I came back. I was overseas. Came back and I was at a tour where he used to be.
You've got a lot of coffee options out there. You've got a lot of veteran and first responder-owned coffee companies as well. Trident Coffee is one of these companies, but they're different. Trident fuels your body and mind with a premium cold brew that's infused with powerful ingredients for performance, focus, and wellness. Made with organic MCT oil, lion's mane, and reishi mushrooms, this isn't just coffee. It's fuel for your brain, ensuring smooth, steady energy with no jitters and no crashes. Plus, the cocoa powder adds antioxidants, and the electrolytes keep you hydrated and balanced. Yes, they are cold brew experts, and their beans are brewed for cold brew optimization. But what does that mean for those of you who also love hot coffee like me? Their coffee tastes amazing, not bitter. So enjoy it hot or iced, mixed into your protein shake, or take it on the go. However you drink it, Trident Coffee is coffee upgraded. Get yours now at tridentcoffee.com and use the promo code TDP15 for 15% off your order. That's TDP15 for 15% off your order. Stay sharp, stay fueled, stay ready.
I did not want to be there.
Did you feel his shadow?
I did. And from that moment, I had to make another transition, get out of the Navy, or I was introduced to somebody, make a move internal to the Navy. So I'm not a warrior by any means. I'm a consummate staff officer, and I pride myself in issues management and crisis communications and financial management and those kinds of things. So I loved being a support role person for the military. I know operators. And I know the tactical side of the Navy and those who run the tactical stuff and total respect for what they do. They're really at the point of the spear. I was very good at being at the handle of the sword, making sure things were where they should have been, making sure that the enterprise had the kinds of services I provided as a supply corps officer first, and then as a public affairs guy second. In a whole bunch of commands for 28 years. So I had to make a choice. Get out, maybe go for an MBA because I was a finance guy. And I met somebody that said, why don't you consider staying in? Look at corporate communications. We have a whole community that does that at the executive level around the world. Maybe you do it. So
when you were first going into college, finance is where you went?
I was business, accounting, and finance. And I thought, wow, I don't have any training in that. I said, we'll train you. We'll send you to a DOD school, but you have to apply. So you put in a lateral transfer to do this. Once you put in that lateral transfer request, the community you're leaving from sort of writes you off and says, well, they don't want to be a part of this anymore. They're out. Risky. New community, you're excited to get in, but there's no guarantee you're going to get in because there's a lot of other folks that want to get in too. And I did it as a senior lieutenant, and it was risky because most of them do it when they're a little more junior. I submitted it, was accepted, fortunately, and made that transition. I thought it'd give me some independence, new field, new education opportunities, something that I felt more aligned with. And then my father passed away. Like, wow, what the heck? I was in the same community that he was in. I'm like, shoot, I did not see that coming. So I drove across country to D.C. to work in the Pentagon as a lieutenant in a completely new community. And we just buried our father at Rosecrans. And talk about alone and unafraid, or very afraid. I thought, holy moly. But I was embraced by a new community, still within the Department of Navy, where I felt really comfortable, going back to my childhood. I mean, these are good people doing a good mission, lots of adventures, lots of fun. And I just embraced it, and they embraced me, and I ended up having 20 years in the public affairs community, which was really executive level communications on different admiral staffs and lots of tours in D.C. and time abroad and managing the public dynamic that the Navy has to face every day. So it was a exciting, no 2 days are the same, fun because the people are fantastic, mission-oriented because it was part of the executive team's decision-making matrix on how do they make certain decisions based on a lot of info. So learned a lot. They sent me to school to the War College, the Naval War College. They sent me to school to American University for a master's in public communications. So I just continually moved through this community with opportunity, which I embraced, travel and fun and people, education. And at 2014, found myself in San Diego at 28 years. And they said, come on back to D.C. again. My wife and I have 2 boys here. And I asked her what she'd like to do. And she said, I like it here, Bill. So I said, then it's time for us to go. An old mentor told me, if you leave an area you really love for a tour of duty in the military, and you really love that spot, there's no guarantee that when you finish your time in the military, you're going to be able to get back there. It might be too expensive. There might not be job opportunity. You might not have any connections. I'm older. One of my father's colleagues who stayed as a mentor to me. And I never forgot that. So I said, nope. Thank you, Navy. It's been a wonderful ride, and I'm bowing out. So I bowed out from the Naval Special Warfare Command. My last 4 years was working for them as their director of communications out of Coronado, and I got to know all the Navy SEALs and the special operators and that community. And I don't have a warfare pin of any kind. I'm really a support person as a senior officer, or junior then senior officer, and took pride in providing the best support you could provide. I even had a 3-star once challenge me and say, during a fitness report review, like a table this distant, slid the paper over to me to read my evaluation, which was a critical one for me to make 05, and said, let me ask you, before I give you your fitness report, why don't you have a surface warfare pin? Wow, really critical time to be asking a question like that, right? You're nervous. This is a 3-star running a numbered fleet. It's pretty substantial. His aide was there, and I know his aide well. And I said, to be honest with you, I don't have a desire to be like you or your operator peers. I provide certain levels of support in a support role, and I take total pride in doing that. I don't want to wear a token pin. I don't want to aspire to be an operator when I'm not. I want to provide you guys with what you need from the designator I have. He sat back. He was a very cerebral guy. Sat back, said, wow, I didn't expect that, but that's absolutely right on. I said, that's how I live. I just think it's important. You have to have really good alignment with who you are, what you do, and how you do it. And this is me. So I got my fitness report. Fortunately, I think he thought the same way because the fitness report was very solid. I ended up getting promoted a couple years later, and the time with this commander and that command was very substantial. But I stayed with my principles on that one. You got to know who you are if you're going to get to that X down the road. That's the right X for you. And I learned that early on. I love the ocean, and I love swimming, and I love surfing it and time in it. And I've been in it with these operators, and they're different beasts. And they laugh and chuckle like, wow, you're a natural in this environment. I said, I'm a natural in this environment, but I'm not a hunter, and I'm not a warrior, and I value what you guys do. We can play in the space for fun, but I provide support to what you all do. Good clarity. As a young man, you don't have that kind of clarity. There's lots of bravado.
I think that's the big component of it for a lot of young men and women who maybe don't get the opportunity to do almost 30 years to where they have the ability to mature while staying in these careers and I don't mean this the way it sounds, but in a positive way. If you come in when you're young and you were to get assigned to a similar type position as a young officer, you might, if you don't have the maturity, feel like, well, I'm not a warrior, I'm not an operator, so I'm not equal to them. But that's the furthest from the truth, because I can guarantee you I'd march every single one of them into this room and they would all say, I'll use the analogy. Usain Bolt can run 9-second 100-yard dash, whatever it is. He can't run it if the blocks aren't set up perfectly, if his shoes aren't made perfectly. All the little things that you never think about, but that are paramount for that operation to happen.
Yeah, it's the tip of an iceberg. There's a lot of stuff underneath that waterline. And it needs to be done right. So I always put out, but when I got a little older, I mean, I've had 60 plus years sort of in this military affairs world. My whole junior life was there. My college years were my 4 years not in that space. And then I served 27 years in the Navy. Then I spent the last decade running 2 nonprofits that supported, in one case, Navy SEAL families, in the other case, the USO. Small nonprofit, large historic nonprofit. Same principles, great purpose, great service, great people. But I would always have some junior officers and folks ask me, hey, Bill, you're managing things from a place that I don't understand. I would tell them, let's talk. I mean, as we talked through it, I found a theme. And it was, we are officers first in the Navy, first and foremost, or a service member. Second, you're a member of a team, a staff. So if you're on a numbered fleet, you're part of that numbered fleet. If you're in a staff in DC, you're on that staff. So you're an officer first, you're part of a staff second. And then third is you have a specialty. It could be intelligence, it could be public affairs, it could be finance, it could be operations, it could be undersea operations, it could be NSW equities. That's your technical specialty. If you lead with your technical specialty, first and foremost, all the time, you're going to limit yourself. You're an officer or a service member first. You're part of a team, a staff, a command second. You support that command. And then you bring to bear some technical expertise. And if you provide that expertise at the top shelf level, and everybody in that staff does that, wow, you've got one hell of a crack team. I've been on a few major staffs, and they were crack teams because everybody knew their place. They knew their base, service member or officer. They knew the command they were at. They weren't dreaming of being at another command. They were there. They were living in the present day. We don't do that a lot these days. And they were bringing their skill sets at their level that were the right ones for that holistic thing. And I said, that's when there's real great power and essence of unity. And these young kids were like, young kids, I mean, 30-year-old, 25-year-old junior officers were like, wow, that makes total sense. I said, so you got to find that for yourself. So fast forward to now the conversation with folks is, I'm thinking of getting out. Like, what do I do? And I sort of go back to that same design. Who are you first? Where are you? What's your group? A lot of times it's family. And then what are your skill sets? And what do you have? They put out when you get out of the Navy, they at least tell us in the Navy, at the TAPS class, look at three things. You look at your professional growth and development. Do you want to pursue that technical skill you have and be a leader in that community? Do you want to pursue money? If you want to make money, maybe that technical skill isn't the way to do it. And three, maybe you want to live in a certain part of the country, geography based on family needs or relatives, or you like someplace. So those are the three. And I listened to that and I thought, yeah, it makes total sense. I got it. But that's all very tactical. I thought, man, that's not deep enough for me. And over the last few years, I really formulated, the why, the who am I? What is it that I really should be doing? And why should I be doing that? And how to dress for success, how to do a resume, elevator pitches, build your LinkedIn site, how to use social media, all tactics, all tactical stuff, all great, needed. We don't need some things. We don't need others. But it's good to know it. But the who are you inside and what's going to give you good peace, which equates to wellness, which is a big driving force for me now, is overlooked. I think the TAP program and the transition programs can do better in that regard. I don't know if there's any return on investment for them to do that, because they're looking at folks that are in. A transition thing has to be done. They need to help these folks get out. But I think they could retweak it a bit today, given the amount of information that's out there on what it means to be well, physically, mentally, spiritually. What does it mean to challenge yourself on what you should be doing, even though you've done X for a number of years? That's the next step. I don't know how the Department of Defense or the VA gets there, but there is a way to do it.
I would say that one of the limiters that I see in offering that, and I think it's great, but unfortunately, there are probably a lot of, and maybe it's the bigger number of young men and women who did an enlistment, maybe 2 enlistments, and they're getting out. For many of them, and I'm surmising that from conversations I've had through this podcast, if they don't have a plan for what they're going to do afterwards, they go to TAPS and it's like, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So let me just sit through this class, check the box so I can get out because I've got to do it.
They have to go through it.
And so I would say the limiter to the DOD and the TAPS program is, unfortunately, a young man or young woman, if they don't know what they want to get to, their new X, it's kind of hard to advise them. So you do kind of have to throw everything at them and let them pick.
Yeah, the Department of Labor has an element that says if you did this in the Navy, these are the jobs in the private sector, and there are codes to them. It's very bureaucratic. It's an eye chart. I mean, I even look at it and I'm like, holy moly, look at all this stuff here. It doesn't need to be so complex. So I ran 2 nonprofits, took great care of Navy SEAL families with a wonderful team, and got very close to the community. My passions went way up. My appreciation for family went really way up. Ran the USO, large, complex organization. Staff guy, I can maneuver in large, complex organizations. We were doing really great stuff. Walked into a team that had some issues, cleaned some things up. 2 years into it, we were tight. Some new employees, very clear mission, everybody together collectively, a great tribe. And then the organization restructured, and my position, along with a bunch of others in the country, went away. Like that. I went in for a meeting one morning, totally unexpected. 2 people to be at the meeting where it was supposed to be one. One was from D.C., an HR person who I know and I think the world of, but it was a very awkward meeting. They said, effective immediately, your position's gone. If you could clean out your desk, give us your credit card, give us the keys. Wow. Holy moly. Another transition. Unexpected.
Forced transition.
No bad blood. I mean, it was just a corporate shifting. I'm like, are you sure I'm not being fired? I don't know what no, Bill, this is a corporate restructure. Unfortunately, you're out. So, like, what do you do with that, right? I call my wife. She comes by with the van. I load it up with all the stuff in the office, and we drive home. The next couple of days, we were going away to Hawaii for a vacation with the boys. We got a lot of free time now. Fortunately, those days in Hawaii were not used as my vacation days. I had a lot of vacation time. So we go to Hawaii and spend a week there. And it just so happens that we're down the street from Lahaina during the fires. And we watched the Hawaiians go through such a horrific thing. We had no electricity in the hotel for 4 days, which was minor in comparison to what was going on in Lahaina.
Right.
The boys watched it. I watched it. It was dark. I mean, you had to walk up ladders with chem lights or stairwells with chem lights. Big moment for the boys, my wife and myself. And we're like, wow, I lost a job, but that's nothing. Absolutely nothing. So talk about a calibrator. Boys never forgot it. We were lucky to get on the right flight to get ourselves out of there on time. Blessed. You come back to San Diego and you're like, wow, look at that dynamic there. Loss of life, loss of property, loss of community. I mean, total hit for Hawaii and just hard. Really puts in place you lose a position if you want to see it that way. You own certain things. Ken talked about that, right? The environmental things. How do you act or how do you manage or how do you respond to those things? I said, gang, we're here. We're healthy. We have a home. We got a community. We're good. We'll figure it out. So my wife said, why don't you just don't do anything for a while and sit back? I'm like, well, we still have to pay bills and we still have to do certain things. And, fortunately, we had prepared over the years to try to have some nest egg of some kind to help. And it helped. Thank goodness for that thing. And throughout a year of something completely different than what you had planned to do, you change and you'll learn. And you open up your aperture to other things. And a gentleman approached me and said, you're a mentor, you're a coach, here's some books, read these. I think that's really what you should do. He's in that space. I said, I don't know. I'm not an entrepreneurial guy. I don't want to coach. I mentor folks. I love it. I think coaching is a neat thing, but I'm not driven by this bottom line. I'm not an entrepreneur. He said, do it. Here, read this stuff. So I read it. It made sense. And how to monetize it made sense. But I said, nah, this is great. I appreciate it. I love it. But no. And he said, well, you need to do something. He's older. So he said, why don't I give you one of these DISC assessments? And I said, I don't even know what that is. So I took an assessment. It's online. It takes 20 minutes. Ask a bunch of questions. You associate words. You answer things. There's no wrong answers. It's a personality character assessment thing. At the end, it spits out who you are from a DISC perspective, and that's dominant, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness are the acronyms for it. So I took it, and he goes, this one's for career, Bill, so let's go through it together, because it gives you spits out a report on you, which I thought was pretty interesting. It was long, a little longer than I liked, but we looked at it. And as we looked at it, this is who I am. I'm a conscientious person. I'm an influencer person, so an IC type of person. Okay, it makes sense now that I know myself a little bit more than I did a decade ago. And then it goes at the end, here's jobs that seem to suit your characteristics. First responder, lifeguard. You happen to like archaeology. I'm an ancient alien fan. And I love forbidden archaeology and that kind of stuff out of a hobby. I'm fascinated with that stuff.
Did you see that new story that just came out like the last day or so, these new aqueducts that they discovered in Egypt?
Yes. Yeah, there's so much more out there that is going to change the story of mankind, right? But it also goes against mainstream scientific theories and things, and it could be a little bit of a problem. But it captured in this list. Maybe consider being a doctor, be a fireman, a policeman, lifeguard. So I go back to that. I'm like, lifeguard. I said, Tony, this is very funny. This is what I did before the Navy, and I absolutely loved it. So my wife said, why don't you lifeguard? I said, oh, God, babe, I don't know about that. And I met a man in the neighborhood by coincidence who was a Navy retired guy, 10 years older than I am, who lifeguards at the Naval Base submarine pool in San Diego. Bill, they're always looking for guards. Why don't you guard? I said, I haven't guarded in years. I mean, I swim and surf, but he said, do it. So I went and saw the director of aquatics and said, maybe I could be a future lifeguard for you. She goes, I'll sign you up for the Red Cross course. Immediately, boom, I got an email from the Red Cross. Take this course. It's 12 hours worth of work. It's there's a book, lots of videos. The videos were fantastic. I hadn't taken a video class in decades, and it was world class. It was fantastic. I loved it. Every day I'm on the computer watching these videos, taking this stuff in, but it wasn't work. It was natural. I thought, wow, I'm really aligned with this stuff. I love it, and I'd forgotten. My wife said, it's interesting. This is the person that I met many, many years ago, right? And you've worked hard and you've done great stuff and it's been a great adventure and we're blessed on many levels, but this is you getting reacquainted with your past. I said, I think it really is. It's fun. So I did it. I've been doing it now for about 6 months. And service, purpose, great tribe and team, and it's in total alignment. So if somebody were to ask me, hey, what do I do post-military, or I'm making a transition at any time, spend some time on that self-evaluation or that assessment to really find out where you might belong, because you might not have even considered it. So the question at first was, where would you be, right? I'm lifeguarding now. I could have lifeguarded back in 1987 and made it an entire career. So I Googled a name of a person who I lifeguarded with because I heard he was still on the East Coast lifeguarding. And sure enough, in 1986, a guy named Sandy, I won't say his last name, is now like the head lifeguard at one of the beaches in southern Jersey. And I'm like, wow, he stayed with it for his entire career. Probably has another job on the side because it's seasonal. I'm like, wow, that he made that a career. I didn't even consider that an option. Open the aperture. So last effort that I've been working on, because I'm lifeguarding now, which is a lot of fun. I go in at 5 a.m, open up the facility with another lifeguard. You have to have 2, and 5:30, the swimmers show up, and they're good swimmers. And today there were some Navy divers, and there were some kids trying to be Navy divers, and there were some kids doing their physical readiness test, and a bunch of retirees swimming laps. And the place was very active. And I jumped in the car after lifeguarding, get off about 9:30, and quick shower, and changed to come up and meet you. And the environment is absolutely right. And it made me realize, how do you get folks to think like this? Because now my day is lifeguarding, raising our 2 boys. They're young men, so we're helping them navigate their way ahead. My wife and I reacquainting, without little kids. So we're doing some fun stuff together, which is just fantastic, in San Diego, which is a lovely place and great people and community church and all that kind of stuff. So I'm like, what do I do? So this gentleman that gave me that DISC assessment, I started a company called Government Assessments 24/7, 24 times 7.
Before you go into that, it's been something I've been thinking about since we've been talking. And I want to go all the way back to you, a young man, just out of college.
Yep.
You've got a job. You're working for a family in Manhattan. You lose that job.
Yep.
And I'm using this as a pivot point for that, take that step back, reevaluate your life, kind of deal. You jumped from civilian and decided to go military.
Yep.
You chose the Navy. Did you look at any of the other branches?
I didn't. I'm really a simple guy in that regard. I wasn't even sure about what I would do in the Navy, but I know the culture of the Navy, and I grew up in the culture of the Navy. And my father was right about great people, great mission, fun adventures. There's no doubt. So I sort of defaulted to what I knew.
So there was nobody else in your ear, even though you kind of had this in your heart, lifeguarding, but you didn't see it as a potential career. No other sources of advice other than going towards the military?
No, because as children, we worked in that shop where I'd worked with the family for a number of years. Easter vacation, Christmas vacation, summer vacations, we spent time up in Manhattan doing that, working there. So there was almost this not hidden, but this subtle, you could also work in this industry too with a family, even though it was never said and it was never promised. I don't want to put like the family in a blame spot, but it was fun as a kid. So you always thought we could work there. So I tried it, and it ended badly. A blessing in disguise. And so I didn't have a guidance counselor from school who I was staying in touch with to help me navigate. Like, this is how you did on exams. This is who you are, and these fields would really be open for you and good. And maybe if you go to the military, you could go to any of these services and try it. I didn't have that layer of depth. It was like this family business thing was always in the background. We knew the military, and it was a great place to be. I found myself completely alone. I went back to the Philadelphia area, hung out with a girlfriend who was not a romantic partner, but a girlfriend who said, "Hey, I can help you. Come stay with me." And I stayed with her until I figured out my next employment gigs, and lifeguarding was part of it. And working in a hospital's emergency room and operating room. They needed a technician to be in there to wear a beeper to help with CPR and first responder stuff inside an institution. So I learned a whole bunch of stuff about that, which resonated with me. My mother was a nurse, so we know triage stuff at home. So did that, and then the lifeguard thing was an opportunity. I went and didn't do real well in the run and the swim because I hadn't prepared at all. All these young kids were out there killing it. But I was comfortable in it to such a degree that they said, "Hey, we'd like to bring you onto the team." And I found out that they were hesitant to bring me on at first because I admitted during the interview that I was probably going to go to officer candidate school, and my time with the lifeguard group was limited. So at first they said no. Then they came back when I saw them the next day and said, "Hey, I know I didn't make the cut, but I'm curious why." I said, "Well, you told us you're going to officer candidate school. We need guards that we can train this year and use them for 5 years." And I said, "Well, I'm not that guy. I'm sorry about that." But I said, "I'll bet you some kids get in trouble because they're young and they're fun and they're not smart sometimes." And they said, "You're absolutely right about that." The guy said, "When can you start? Can you be here Monday?" I said, "No, I can be here in 2 weeks, though, because I need to give the organization at least 2 weeks' notice." He goes, "I love that. Be back here in 2 weeks." So I showed up and got all kinds of gear, and it went from lifeguarding as sort of a part-time thing to a really great transition thing. And then the officer candidate school thing happened.
Now, going into the military for you, obviously growing up in the Navy, were you squared away? Were you, and I don't.
My father would say no.
Okay. Where I'm going with this is, was there any apprehension of signing on the dotted line and actually toeing the line in the military? And how was the experience once you got into the academy?
That's a good question. There was some trepidation and some nervousness with doing it because I was sort of a wilder young guy than folks who signed up for the Navy, at least in my mind, or as a high school, college kid. I wasn't as squared away as my father, that's for sure. He used to run in the mornings, and every Monday he would get me up and say, "Bill, let's go for a run." I'd say, "Not today, Dad, I'll start next Monday." So a couple years later, he bought me a shirt. "I'll start next Monday." Oh, freaking Dad. He was a gem. So I wasn't really ready for the disciplines. Love the culture. Could assimilate to that with my eyes closed. But I was a little apprehensive about the disciplines. But my father always said, when you find something you need to do, you just do it. Work hard at it. Be a quick study. Be responsible, be accountable. And most of all, be yourself. His motto, and I use it to this day, was, "Thousands have come before you, and thousands are going to follow you. Don't let your apprehension right now interfere with you doing it." And I didn't realize the value of that back then. I've used it a lot with folks. I'm even using it with our boys now as they get a little sensitive about what their next steps are. I said, "Don't worry. Have no anxiety. Don't stress it. Hundreds have come before you, and many more are going to follow you. And if they can do it, you can do it with your eyes closed." So I went in there sort of with my eyes closed. I'll just listen. I'll act. And I showed up at officer candidate school, and I had longer hair than I have now. And They just took total advantage of me and got that stuff cut, and they cleared me up very quickly. And then I have a photo of my father and I during commissioning, and there's this young naval officer, and there's the older naval officer, and he's like, wow, it took me 4 years at the Naval Academy to turn into an ensign, and they did it with you in 4 months. He goes, I don't know what the better program is. I said, well, he says, I enjoyed my 4 years, but Annapolis is tough. He was a class of 61. And he says, in 4 months, they turned you around completely. So he's really proud, didn't show a lot of emotion. And it was great serving with him for 2 years, even though I went as far away from where he had been and where he was. He was in Seattle. I was in Bahrain and the Middle East and Japan and the Philippines. So it was interesting that I ran to be where he wasn't ever. And now I look back and think, God, it would have been nice if I was a little more appreciative and closer, You'll learn these things and you hope to share them with others who might be in a similar kind of situation, and maybe they get a grain of salt from that,
You mentioned previously that your intention going in was not, you were not thinking career.
I was not. I was definitely not.
And then an opportunity presented itself and you stayed in. Was there ever a point, though, getting to that, even that 20-year mark where it's like, this is getting to be a grind?
There's a number of points. And my father passed away in 1989. No, excuse me. He retired in 1989. He passed away in 1993. And I happened to be in San Diego where he and Mom had retired. So I was able to be close to him when he was ill, and then he passed away. So I was part of that. But it's a foggy window. When he passed away, I saw his classmates take care of my mom and his sons in a great way. I didn't expect this. The camaraderie, the care, and the level of effort to keep me on a good path was always there. Because you always go through every few years, I've had enough of the Navy. It's time to get out. I'm going to do something else. Grass is greener. I have a number of friends, dad's colleagues and friends who they're no longer with us, but they were the ones that kept me on track. Shave your mustache, keep your hair short, get back to the Pentagon. I'm like, I really don't want to do that. I'm just working. Don't talk to me until you're in 20 years. And they were black and white about that. They were very intent on, you need to stay on this good path, young man. You're doing great. Don't deviate from it. And they were absolutely right. If left to my own devices, maybe I'd be a lifeguard somewhere. It could be fun. But the growth and maturity of that whole thing, getting back to Dad's take, was, you serve in the military, great people, great mission, lots of adventures.
Sponsorship for this podcast comes from Brothers in Arms USA. They're a veteran-owned and operated clothing and accessories brand that's 100% American-made. Every piece tells a story of brotherhood, respect, discipline, and honor, deeply inspired by those who serve, those who have served, and those who have paid the ultimate price serving our great country. Whether you're an outdoor enthusiast, a proud patriot, or simply somebody who values high-quality American craftsmanship, they've got something for you. Go check out brothersinarms.com, spelled out fully, brothersandarms.com, and use the promo code TRANSITION20 to get 20% off your purchase.
So the people thing was super. And when he passed away, I really saw the outpouring amount of support from my mother and even to his sons. And people became available if you were willing to reach out. And so often, I'm done in the Pentagon here. I'm ready to go. I'm a bachelor. I'm getting older. I'm not getting younger. I work. I'm successful at my work, but everything else seems to be empty. They were a little more cold than I think people are today. You can be less empty later. Keep going. So I'm indebted to them. And there's a number of them that would always stay in touch and beat me up a little bit.
Either of your brothers go towards the military?
No, they didn't. One thought about it. He went to USD, and he considered being a helicopter pilot type of guy, but then he said no, and met a gal. They moved up to Seattle. They've both been with Costco for 35 years. They found their tribe, and their niche. Raised 3 boys and are launching them now, and life has been great for them. They bring a lot of energy into life. Life has served them really well. But they found their institution. They found their bigger tribe. They've had a blast. I have another brother who's in between us, who's been the black sheep of the family, struggled with a lot of stuff over the years. Fortunately, he's healthy. Fortunately, he's here. And he's still on his journey, right? Everybody's got different journeys. So the nonprofit space is a good space. If somebody asked, I'm getting out, I'm not sure what I want to do. I'm not driven by money, making a lot of money, that kind of thing, but I want to serve. Look at the nonprofit space. As we talked about earlier, a person getting out now has more info available to them and more organizations standing by to support them than we ever had years ago. Not that it's back then it was harder. I think the country overall is looking at wellness more, mental health definitely more. Nutrition, we have, MAHA now. Let's make America healthy again. I'm all for that concept. I don't know if the people managing it or running it, or they are who they are, but let's make America healthy again, mentally, spiritually, physically. And there's a lot everybody can do on their own to do that. But there's all kinds of resources available to do that. We didn't have these kinds of smartphones when I was a kid, let alone in school. And so I want some information on something. I'm a 62-year-old guy. I swim, I'm surfing, I'm active, I'm healthy, I'm blessed. No meds. The docs are like, hey, keep trying to drop 15, 20 pounds, you're good to go. But that's the worry I have. We watch what we eat. We stay mobile. Mobility is life. You've got to stay mobile. And we've found sense of purpose in, of course, family first, but then in where we spend our other time. And that service or purpose is so essential. And I see the TAP class talking a lot about transitioning, using your skill sets you have in the military to do X, Y, and Z. You'll be able to pay bills. And there's not that new X, or what is it you should really be doing? So I created a government assessments 24/7 or 24x7 LLC. My goal is to get these series of DISC assessments, one for just the personality, one for career, one for motivation, one for, what was the last one? Emotional intelligence. To get those 4 placed in the TAP courses globally for all of DoD and into the VA system at the VA centers or with the healthcare providers who feel there's a need for that. There's lots of assessments and things out there, but I saw what this one did for me. And I've sent it out to a number of folks who've taken it, and they're like, wow, Billy, this is unbelievable. I've even put it in the hands of, I don't want to say who, but somebody in the police department who thinks it's sheriff's department and transitioning incarcerated people. There's courses they go through when they get out. A lot of tactics in there. Let them think a little bit more of who they really are and where they might want to go. So I want to get this thing out there. It's for government at the local, state, and federal level, but my ultimate agenda is to get this into the VA and into DoD at the TAPS course. But those are big institutions, and they're complex, and getting something new in there is not going to happen overnight. I don't take a salary. I've created this company. I'm the founder. But it's purpose, and I believe in it. And the folks I've sent it to take it, they're like, wow, Billy, there's something here. And there is something there, because I think that's the component that's missing, is take a harder look at yourself internally. And there's a whole bunch of stuff available out there now for you to help you navigate, if you're willing to accept that, where you could go. It's exciting.
Did this look inside you come from reading those books you were recommended, or was there a different catalyst or a moment in your life that really kind of changed your perspective on focusing on this health and wellness component?
That's a good thing. I think the health and wellness thing surfaced when I worked with the Naval Special Warfare community folks, because they're really the epitome of maximizing the capability of a man. I don't say woman yet because there's no woman SEALs, but I think it's open.
Women just got through Ranger School and got a Ranger tab.
Yeah, I was going to say women are opened up to it, but they've got to get through that pipeline, and there's a weeding out process. So it's very complicated, but it's only a matter of time. But I saw an institution work on like making a most capable man to do something. And within that realm was health and wellness and strength and fortitude and eating habits. They do it at an extreme. They're beasts of people. Some of the nicest folks. I looked at that and like, man, I probably need to do a better job of taking care of my own health. Own yourself, right? Which I didn't do for a long time. Fortunately, I've been blessed with good activities and stuff, but I was never watching what I ate, and I wasn't exercising enough. I was an outdoorsy guy, never a gym guy. Probably need to spend a little more time holistically on my family. God bless my wife. She had to deal with me a lot and a lot of work that I was doing and raised the two boys. She's holistic by nature. She was a chiropractor. She believes in wellness. So this stuff resonates with her. She's been trying to get me to do it for years. So I watched this community do that, and that sort of planted the seed for me, like, wow, I probably need to change. And as I was changing, I found, well, this resonates with me empirically. There's no resistance, no pushback. I'm not disciplined in any of it, but it really feels right. Where accounting never felt right. I mean, I had to force that. Numbers for me, I could do it, but it was always edgy. The communication stuff was good, but there were certain components of that world I didn't care for. It didn't align with me. There was a lot of agendas and shaping of that stuff. Valuable to know, but it's not me. The wellness stuff, it sat in my lap, and I thought, this is a puppy dog I can hold. So that was the beginning of it. And then I took over. I was asked to by a board member when I retired. We didn't know what we were going to do. And we knew we were going to stay here. We picked geography first. Kids were in school. You can't complain about San Diego. San Diego County is lovely. San Diego City can get a little sporty. But overall, the place is wonderful. So we said, we're picking geography. Now I got to find work. So I was going through interviews. Suit, short hair, nice tie. And the interviews went well, but it wasn't my thing. And at my retirement ceremony, a man approached me and said, Bill, my name is John, and I'd like to talk to you about an opportunity on Monday if you like. Okay, John, good to meet you. Thank you for being here. I gave him a call. He says, we have a foundation that helps Navy SEAL families, and it's a little undisciplined. We're trying to grow it and solidify it and mature it. It needs a consummate staff officer to help sort of run things. That's what I do. And so they brought me on as the first executive director, and I helped turn it into a small, very functional and good nonprofit to one that's totally viable, going to be around forever, and provides wonderful programs in a crowded space of people helping the SEALs. So as I progressed through the nonprofit space, it sort of compounded that initial instinct of wellness is good, family's great. And I ran a nonprofit with some really great teammates. And that solidified for me that felt right, and it was right. And then I needed to learn more about it. I went to the Harvard Business School. The alumni host a course in San Diego for executives for 6 weeks to, run nonprofits and how to do that. Took that course, and it aligned with everything that I was trying to do, and the mission first. For us, programs first. So it felt right. And as I got out of that, but I was shy to speak back then because I was mindful to the exposure issues that community faces. And I had talked to a number of the leaders. People said, why didn't you post more? Why don't you put stuff out for the family's sake and the individual's sake and the command's sake? We're not going to overexpose this. And I really did my best to try to minimize that as a handshake agreement with one of the commanders. I said, we'll never exploit you all. So fundraising gets really challenging. So we raised good funds for board members around the country, but that was a delicate place to be. But the purpose and the mission was rock solid.
It's an awkward operational space because it's important for the families, but the reason why that family became affiliated with it is very tragic. It really, I would imagine, puts you from an operational standpoint in an awkward place.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because we dealt with a lot of casualty affairs on the periphery. When I was in active duty, we dealt with them, the casualty affairs in the NSW community from a family's communication perspective. So through some of the real loss of life in that community, those families got a lot of immediate attention, and they needed help. We tried to help, and we gave them a lot of shelter and helped them where they needed it and where they wanted it, sometimes where they didn't know they needed it. So I learned a lot about these families that had somebody in their family in harm's way to such a degree they were coming back mentally struggling, broken, or in a casket. And that was humbling to me. That was really, I felt that. I'm like, God, babe, this is hard. And I learned from it. So when I retired, I told my wife, we have 2 criteria, babe. What do you think? And we walked through it together. And my criteria was I want to continue to serve in some capacity. So anybody who's getting out now or transitioning through something, build some foundation for you, for yourself. Mine was I want to serve. I don't know what that looks like yet, but service is big. And 2 is I always want to learn because I've always loved learning. So what do I do with that? This guy approaches me and I said, wow, babe, we can still serve. It's going to be in the NPO space. We'll figure that out. Well, there's accounting, there's fundraising, there's audits, there's board relationships, there's management, there's governance. I'm comfortable with all that stuff.
Was the foundation already up and running? Or
It was already a 501c3. We didn't have any staff. They had some people helping do stuff and they were doing great things, but it was very wild still. And there's a lot of other nonprofits doing stuff too. Because there's a lot of need. I was defaulted to the Navy has some responsibilities to take care of those kinds of things, and they do the best they can. And some of it's really high level, but there's always some other things that require some care. So we found those gaps, and I told the commanders I'll help fill those gaps through the NPO mechanism, and we'll do it in a way that works with your culture. So we didn't overexpose stuff. We tried not to. So service and what was the other one? Learning. So I learned in everything you'd want to know about the NPO world. And then I rolled over to the other NPO, and it was much bigger, and I was able to apply everything there. And I was going, I thought, swimmingly well, and we were really pretty tight. I thought I would, it's funny, you build a schedule. I'm like, I was going to stay there till 65 or 67 and then retire in San Diego from that position because it was a wonderful position with great people, good board, wonderful team that I constructed after we made some changes. And we're still all in touch to this day, and they're all over the place. So I had my own plan, my grand plan, and it completely fell apart. As a 60-plus-year-old guy, I'm like, wow, how do you tackle this? Well, we tackled it with enthusiasm and positivity, and we're not going to dwell on the what-ifs. We're going to dwell on the what can we do now. And we had that hiccup not a hiccup for us, but we saw what happened in Lahaina, real calibrator. We saw what our boys went through during COVID, which everybody experienced. So now we're like, okay, let's regroup and resettle. My youngest son's so funny. He said, when we sat down and told him I'm no longer working, do I need to start a GoFundMe page for you, Dad? I'm like, my God, this is coming from a young teenager. I'm like, wow, what a great idea. But no, we're not doing that. But what a brilliant idea. So they're thinking.
He's an entrepreneur.
He is. They're thinking through this, right? And I said, wow, I didn't even think of that. I said, God bless you. But no, we're good. Right? We've planned for unexpected hiccups. This is one. I got to do some soul searching and figure out what's next. And hey, shoot, if worse comes to worse, I'll take a part-time job. Mom will take a part-time job. We're going to be fine. You guys have to continue on as students. Do well as students. Be good citizens. Take care of each other. Right? That's your role. We've got everything else taken care of. Please don't worry about that. We're going to be fine. And then we went to Hawaii and came back and were like all grounded with what we'd seen there. So unexpected changes I had a plan. I was 65. I can retire. It'd be fun. San Diego's a nice place. My wife and I will travel. So now I find myself unemployed for a whole year trying to figure it out. And during that year of discovery was when I took this assessment, and it aligned me to who I am from years ago. I thought, wow, that completely caught me off guard. If I would have taken that assessment when I retired in 2014, my path might have been completely different. Completely different. If I would have taken an assessment like that and been mature enough to understand what it meant before I went to officer candidate school, I could be that lifeguard. But when you're young, you're impatient, arrogant, stupid. You don't listen. The teacher will come when the student is ready. So I've always been a quick study professionally, probably a slower study on some of life's lessons. And I don't know if I would have been ready for something like that at that age. That was years ago.
But like you talked about when you first, early into your Navy career, somebody happened to put in your ear, hey, this admin assignment, it would be good for you. And you listened. What was your duty assignment at the time before you went to that? And what were you thinking was going to be the duration of your career had that advice not happened?
Which one? When I made the transition?
Yeah, when you went from
the supply corps community to the public affairs community, I happened to meet somebody in a formal inspection lineup that was standing next to me. So what do you do? What do you do? We compared some notes. They said, ever thought about this community? Not really, but I didn't even know about it. Why don't you come by and we'll have coffee and talk about it? And I was at the stage where I needed to make a change. So I went and had coffee. I could have said, hey, thanks for the coffee, and never taken the step to go to their office to have coffee. And I was at least smart enough to know there was opportunity within a culture that I loved and knew and felt safe in, enough that I should give it a hard look and try. And maybe that was the common sense meter in me really operating well to say, give it a shot and try it. And then I had, a wonderful run of working for fantastic people, having worked with great people, some wonderful folks working for me. It was just, I think you get out of life what you put into it at the intimate personal level.
Well, and you talk about opportunities that come by relationships, because one of the things that I was thinking, the random gentleman that showed up at your retirement ceremony.
Yeah.
Did you ever find out, was it truly happenstance that he happened to be there?
Somebody asked him to go to listen to me and meet me at my retirement.
So it goes...
Because they were how should I say, the executives of that board were trying to figure out who was the person that they could empower to run this very young nonprofit. And so they had a design. I mean, they went there with a purpose. I'm aloof. I'm a little naive in that kind of world. I'm not a strategist from that perspective. And I know these board members very well now. Shoot, I worked with them 7 years in intimate detail on a whole bunch of stuff. But they came there, with the intention of not wishing me well, assessing, is that a guy that can do for us what we need to have done? And they thought, yeah, maybe. And then we talked. We had a couple conversations and a few interviews with different board members. And some of the board members and I just clicked. Others were a little distant. We came from different places. But I think they ultimately made the decision, yeah, this is a man of integrity who's accountable and responsible who will help us move this thing forward. And I'm still in touch with all of them. I think it was a very good run. I didn't expect to be there for 7 years. I mean, so on a tactical level for somebody getting out, when you have a job opportunity ahead of you, you got to do your due diligence with the benefits associated with that position. I defaulted to, I've got a Navy retirement, so you don't have to pay me as much. That's foolish. I don't need any benefits because I already have medical coverage and insurance. 401k plan would have been nice. But I was...
Well, from a selfish perspective, it's almost your job in virtually every environment to be thinking about the next person. you've established a baseline.
Yeah, I did.
That the next person who comes in who doesn't bring everything that you brought to the table, they've got to fight for all that.
And I hand selected the person that I recommended that they take a hard look at. I couldn't say hire them because I had departed and said, here's a viable candidate. I think you should really take a strong look. And they looked at others and then they ended up selecting them. But the environment I created for them still had some work to be done in that HR space. We're very small, but so a person transitioning, when you're stepping into another professional opportunity, you really have to advocate for yourself. And you don't have to do it in an adversarial way or an aggressive way, but you definitely do it from a place of knowledge. And there are lots of organizations to help you get that knowledge build and prepare you for, let's talk about a 401k plan and what that looks like. Let's talk about PTO and what that looks like. I expect to do the job. I'll be doing X, Y, and Z, so the home-life balance won't be really in check. I'll be working in this space on weekends, at nights. How much lateral ability do I have for my schedule to work from home, work on the road, the day schedule time? Is this a 9-to-5 job? No. Then you need to give me some independence. And I want all of those components are definitely worth talking about. And you can have somebody help you prepare that as opposed to thinking, and go in and, hey, I'm happy to get a job. They're going to pay me a good salary. They said, what salary range are you looking for? I didn't know. I said, whatever a nonprofit of this size and fundraising and program execution does in San Diego County, those executive directors, there's a band there. Somewhere in that band, I'm happy. Probably should have gone a little bit more to the right because I bring a lot to the table. But at the time, I'm happy to get a job. So you sell yourself short a little bit because you want to secure that job.
Well, and that's
because I was looking at it tactically.
That's one of the downfalls of almost 30 years in the Navy. You never really had to sell yourself per se.
You never really did. No, you could sell issues and you could sell topics.
And there was a pay scale for the rank. You never really had to go in and negotiate pay.
That was all. Yeah, you never even thought about that because that was all congressionally mandated. I mean, it was all regulated. So there are places, though, that offered up services to do that. But, and you middle-aged guys are like, I can do this on my own. I'm going to go out there and I can meet with somebody and talk with them and advocate for yourself, find resources that can help you, do the knowledge build, and then have the negotiation. It's not even a negotiation. Have the discussion about the benefits packages that are right. Not just available for you, but that are right. And if they're not right, walk away. If you're yourself and you're true to yourself, you can do that. If you're really nervous about income and feeling like I have to take this, you lose some of the edge. A tough place to be. And if you're younger, sometimes you're more flexible, sometimes you're more nervous. When you're older, you've got a lot of life experience, you could be a little more patient and maybe even some financial flexibility. I didn't have any flexibility when I left that business in Manhattan. I took a huge risk when I left one community and was going to another. If I didn't get picked up in that other community, wow, this is sort of an unexpected step out in the private sector without a goal. I mean, it wasn't like I need to go to X. I didn't even know where I was going. So I'm indebted to the Navy and the people I worked for and with. Definitely my parents, who are sweet. But the military gave me great opportunity. I think I did pretty well by them. Loved serving in a nonprofit capacity to help the patrons of the services provided. It was, humbling and wonderful work. Nonprofit industry is a very good industry if you find the right nonprofit with the right folks. And now I'm independent, and I've fallen back on being a lifeguard, which is what I did before I joined the Navy.
Full circle.
Full circle.
The thing that you said, though, that to me is also very important, and it's that thing of doing your best and doing a good job in whatever assignment you're in. Mm-hmm. Because as you came to your unexpected retirement,
yep,
you had other people that you weren't even aware of who were looking out for you based on your performance and what they thought of your character and your ability, telling somebody else, hey, you need to come to this retirement ceremony. There's now an available player that you need to draft.
Yeah, there's a whole level of energy happening outside of you that could be working on your behalf and you don't even know it, right? If you've got the right energy and purpose and history of doing well at whatever it is you do, there are advocates out there that you don't even know of, and there are connections out there that you're not even aware of. And how you tap into that's still a mystery to me. Maybe you don't. Maybe they tap into you if you're open, right? So I'm a hunter in some ways, and I like to pursue something. But the less I pursue and I sit back and I'm really content with things, the more things open up.
Well, not to go super, super deep in it, but you mentioned being in an inspection and somebody standing next to you. Hey, what do you do? You could have rejected that cup of coffee. I'm sure there's other people who invited you up to a cup of coffee. You said no. But for whatever reason, things align and you went for that cup of coffee.
Yeah.
But if you look back on yourself and you say, I say no more than I say yes, what are those no's limiting your opportunities?
Yeah. It's funny you say that. On the way up today with my son, we were talking about his next steps. He's going to go to college, and he's excited, and he wants to learn. He's very smart, and he's eager to meet with others, professors in finance and investments and those kinds of things that he wants to learn more about, starting a business. I can tell him what I know, but an objective academic, and he will have some great conversations. So I said, but you have to get out of the house. You have to meet people, to engage with folks. We go for coffee. I don't know what kids that age would go for, but be out and about and be yourself, be sincere with folks about what you're doing now, what you think you might want to do later, and be open and transparent with that. If you don't do that, you're missing opportunities. And he says, what are those opportunities? I don't know, but they're there. Take it from 60 years of life. They're always there. But in today's day of attention to technology, you can spend a lot more time on a screen than you can conversing with somebody. I was a little reluctant, Paul, to do this because this is new for me to do a podcast. Somebody said, Billy, do it. You do podcasts when you have lunch with somebody all the time. Just talk with them. Share what you do. You do it with folks who ask you for some advice on something, or somebody has a thought and wants to bounce an idea off you. You can do it via text. You do it on email. You do it face to face. Just go meet Paul. Step out of your comfort zone and share. And oh gosh, I love my freedoms and trying to be a active, mobile guy at this age, but I can be a little rigid because I'm not a young man. And I said, nope, I'm going to go do this, babe. We're going to meet this gentleman. He's got a great podcast, and I'll just figure it out, right? So I told my son, figure it out. But you can't figure it out sitting in the house all the time. You've got to get out and meet folks. Who knows where it will take you? It's an exciting opportunity. So it applies for service members and for first responders. It applies for kids growing up. It applies for folks losing or changing careers, changing their personal relationships. We transition through our entire lives all the time. When you leave high school, it's a transition. Your first job ends eventually and you get a second one. You might lose somebody in your life that was valuable to you. It's a transition. Transitions are not new to service members. They're doing it all the time. Somebody asked, what's your message to some service members? You've been transitioning your whole life. You went to boot camp or officer candidate school or went to a service academy. Huge transition. This transition is no different. Embrace it with the same enthusiasm. Embrace it with the same kind of a little bit of apprehension, but great knowledge build. There's resources out there that are available to you if you're willing to ask or just research it for that sake, you're transitioning. There is nobody I've met that has never transitioned through something that came with a challenge. But if they do it openly and honestly and sincerely, I think once they're through the transition, they're better for it. Other opportunities surface. It's exciting. What's the alternative? Looking at it like it's a depressing thing? No, this is a great opportunity. How do you convey that to a person? Hard when they're afraid. A relationship could be on the rocks. They might have a chemical dependency. Mentally, they can be stressed. One of my biggest
I think one of the big pieces that, real quick, that I think gets overlooked, especially coming from these two careers, is there's such a perception of loss of identity moving away from these careers that I don't think the private sector understands.
They don't. And I'm at awe of the service members that served after 9/11 for 20 years. All volunteer force. A lot of our nation's kids, I call them kids, young adults, put themselves in harm's way in Iraq and Afghanistan, not prepared for it. Special operators are prepared. They know what they're getting into. But the generalists, and there's a lot of them out there that were at forward operating bases, and they're forward deployed, they're doing stuff. Those kids, I call them kids with total respect, those kids, our country owes them such a debt of gratitude. Volunteer force, whether we should or shouldn't have been in Afghanistan, Iraq, whatever. It's a political thing for others to look at. Those kids were serving, and they went through a bunch of stuff, and they saw things they probably didn't want to see, and they're struggling in many ways. I think the country and the VA have done a very good job of honoring service members, much better now than they did years ago. The services of the VA are fantastic. There's some that bitch and moan and complain about it, but it's an organization that is constantly morphing and changing for the better. Much better than it was 15 years ago. I even use the VA for medical stuff. I like it. San Diego's better. We've got a big medical facility here. It's a military town. I don't know what it'd be like in Tennessee, but as an institution, they're doing great. The transition for these young military professionals, they're part of the 1% of the country that doesn't have their own planes. But they're part of something that's better than themselves. They've contributed. They should hold their heads high. They're going to have to learn a new language because the private sector is different. The people dynamic is the same. There's no UCMJ, though, so the workspace can be a little more sporty. People have agendas. People can come and go. They can learn that that's tactical. They should be proud of what they did. We should honor them, which we do. And they should seize the opportunities out there through the vehicle of nonprofits and organizations that are there to support veterans. But you have to own it yourself. There's a number of them that have great names, and they say, we'll help you get a job. You get the job yourself. They will help you with some of the tactics, maybe some connections. But that's all good unless you really know who you are inside. And I think that's missing for a lot of them because they were young. How do you get them to understand better who they are? That's a big question. Most people don't even ask it in the private sector. They're all on their treadmills. Veterans are not the private sector. They might work in the private sector afterward, but they are a veteran. It's a different culture. And that culture doesn't go away. That cultural attribute you have doesn't go away. Same in law enforcement. If I've learned anything about law enforcement, if I could share a thought on that one, and I know very little about it other than doing a ride-along a few years ago, is that they are in harm's way every single day here in the country. And our country doesn't give them the recognition that they need and they deserve. I've lived abroad, many different countries, served with operators who've done incredible things, been in some pretty funky places myself, but never have I felt the stress and strain of what I felt on a ride-along in Indianapolis, Indiana, with some young 22-year-old kid who's married and had 2 kids at home, and big Italian guy, all geared up with safety stuff. And we rode from 11 o'clock at night till like 4 in the morning. And the stuff we encountered and the stuff we faced and was eye-opening. And every city's dealing with that. And the first responders who do so much, I'm glad to see there are great nonprofits supporting them. And there's associations that represent them. And that the public seems to, I believe, really support them and respects and understands the need for them. Everyone talks about DOD and veterans. I've started to talk a little bit more about, hey, the first responder community, people get out of that community, and the stuff they've done to keep us safe or to respond to us at a time of need, what they've done in a couple of years is what some people might have done 20 years. We can never neglect that. So I thought it was great when you're talking transition for both. But I have a very soft spot for the first responders and what they do. Police, firemen, ambulance folks. I mean, there's a whole emergency room personnel. I worked in an emergency room for a year. And the stuff I saw in there, holy moly, people live that. We can't operate the civil society we have without that infrastructure, first responders doing what they do every day. And their transitions might even be tougher because I think what they face is more personal as an observation.
From a naive perspective, when I first kicked off this podcast, that's where I was thinking I was going to stay in my comfort zone. I knew the first responder world. I knew the law enforcement world. Let me talk to other first responders about their transitions away. Because at the core, that's what it was about. It was to me, what are you going to do afterwards? And it was a random conversation with a member of our in-house legal team, because I was still working for the DA's office at the time, to get their approval. And in that conversation, just randomly, well, you can talk to veterans too. And you'd have thought that a light bulb that could light up the city of LA went off. I was like, I hadn't thought about it. And what I've told people since is what we share is they do a great job on the front end of showing us all the cool things we can do in these careers. And on the way out the door, there's the door. Yeah. If you don't have a plan for yourself, that's not our problem. Thanks for your time.
You're on your own. Where we have the VA, there is no A.
No.
There is no A. You're really left alone.
And
a young person, after seeing the kinds of stuff that first responders are involved with regularly, left alone after that adrenaline high for 5 years, 6 years, whatever, left alone and no purpose or service or path after that, they can, I imagine, they can go downhill very quickly. And we probably could do that better.
Well, I would say for me, the tail end of my career and obviously my time doing this podcast, where I got at the tail end of my career when I moved into a management or supervisory position.
Right.
And you start seeing the job from a person perspective. You're no longer the person with your head in the rut. You're now stepping back and you're looking at the other people getting their head down and getting it done. So you start learning the aspect of, I need to take care of my people.
Yeah.
And especially hearing some of the stories that I've had the opportunity to with this podcast is, if you're 5 years into it, 10 years into it, 2 enlistments into it, whatever it is, and it might be very easy just to put your head down and go, I've got to go until my retirement. But if going to that 20 years or 30 years is going to take so much of you as a person, it's time for you to make the hard decision, step back and go, what else can I do?
Yeah.
Because riding this roller coaster for 20 or 30 years just because you don't perceive being able to do anything else, that's the worst thing you can do.
Or holding on to get the golden ring of a retirement.
Yes.
Yeah. So as I've looked at wellness, right? So I look at it from a selfish perspective. 60 plus years old, my joints, got to make sure my diet's right. I got to get mobility. I want to stay active so I can be really mobile later in life. In this personal discovery, and I read a lot about different things and all the aspects of that and how to manage them better. One of my biggest takeaways is the adversity of sustained stress in your life and what that does to your immune system, what it does to your sleep, what it does to your psyche. I mean, there's a whole bunch of adverse stuff going on if you're not just stressed occasionally for something, but if you're maintaining levels of stress. And those who are staying on in the military beyond where they should get out. Somebody asked, did you get out at the right time? I got out absolutely at the right time. If I would have taken another tour, I would have done so. I'm sure it would have been a nice move and good adventure, but I would have been stressed about what are my next steps? That stress during that period, aside with other stresses, not good for you. So mitigating and managing that stress. I can only imagine the first responders' level of stress they deal with. It's not over when they go home and they take their gear off. I imagine they're still digesting some of what they've been involved with, what they've seen, and the community they're involved in. And you don't manage stress right. Doesn't matter what diet you're on. Doesn't matter if you drink or don't. Doesn't matter if you're exercising. Who cares about the sleep? If you're not managing that stress, it's one of my big takeaways as I'm looking at stuff. If you don't have that reduced anxiety and minimal stress in check, all your other efforts are for naught.
What is the grind? It's not just a routine, but the decision we make to wake up, give everything we've got, then find a way to go further. Grind, spelled GRND, is more than a brand. It's a movement, an emotion we all feel connected to as we work daily to pursue our goals and support each other. Founded by a former Army Ranger, Grind Activewear has a clear mission to give 100% and then some more in sport, fitness, and in life. Functional, high-quality performance wear that's rooted in American culture because you demand gear that outworks the rest. Whether you're on the field, in the gym, or building your own lane, Grind is for those who refuse to settle. Go check out thegrindcollective.com and tap into something bigger than clothing. And while you're there, use the promo code TRANSITION15 to get 15% off your purchase. You're likely already on the grind. Maybe you just don't realize it yet, but the grind continues.
And so I'm just starting on this little journey about the stress thing as I look at wellness. I put wellness reluctantly on this LinkedIn thing as one of the descriptors for me. And people are like, wow, Bill, that is so you. I'm like, I didn't know it was me, but I feel like it's me because wellness is so important to everything we do, regardless of who you are or where you are. And you have to own it yourself because there's a lot of outside factors and forces, interfering with your ability to be your best. So how do you turn the noise down? How do you turn off the things that you know are not good for you? And how do you move forward, right? With a good attitude and positivity in a place where there's a lot of negativity. Our middle brother is a chemically dependent grown man, and I'm happy he's here today. And alcohol and then opioids when he had a surgery. So he's clean, but his journey has been hard. And stress was a component of it. If the stress were lower, or he managed things in such a way where he wasn't so anxious and the stress was better, maybe that tendency for addiction wouldn't have been so strong, right? Psychologists will look at it, medical folks will look at it. I'm just trying to be the common man who's taking in knowledge to do better, serve, help, take care of myself so I can do more service and help in a community that I think is a meaningful one. The veteran community is definitely a meaningful one, equal to that or even a step down from the local law enforcement because that's local. We got bases in San Diego, but they're not fighting wars here. First responders up and down the Southern California coast are, I shouldn't say fighting wars, but they're in hostile situations daily.
If there's something that is, and I never want to, another thing that I've gratefully learned doing this podcast is the importance of acknowledging your trauma. Don't try to compare what somebody else has experienced.
That's right.
I've had tier 1 operators. I've had guests on the show who did 4 years, 1 enlistment. It doesn't matter. Trauma is trauma to you. You have to address your trauma.
Yep.
We all in these careers, veteran, first responder, experience trauma.
Yeah.
The one big difference though is, and it doesn't have to be trauma in the sense of violent attacks.
Right.
It could be, I had a guest on recently. He was a cop for 34 years, started out in Jersey, ended up in Vegas. He was telling a story of saving a 1-year-old little girl. 1-year-old or 1 month old? But a very young little girl. Scooping her up, getting her to the hospital, she survived. The thing is, though, is if that little girl hadn't survived, every time that he drove through that intersection where she lived and he went to that call, even if he doesn't realize it or she doesn't realize it consciously, you're subconsciously reliving that trauma.
Yeah.
I've had guests on here who, with their family the very next day, they worked a night shift the night before and they were in a knockdown, drag out fight at the intersection of walk and don't walk. And the next afternoon, they're driving through that intersection with their wife and their kids. Are you supposed to turn to your kids and go, hey, you know what almost happened to mommy here last night?
Yeah.
It
sticks with you.
That trauma, you constantly relive it.
Yeah. I can't feel what you're saying because I'm not there. But I can appreciate it because you the first responders are local. So when something happens there, they're going to pass that place often, possibly. What happens abroad for our forces abroad, they might come back with some mental scars or some other ailments or thoughts that are really tough, but they're not walking that street anymore. And that's a subtle difference, but I think a very significant one. But every individual's trauma is personal and hard. And it's okay to seek help. You got to acknowledge it with yourself, maybe your very intimate loved ones. You got to find some peace. I put out something called CAG War. I'm an acronym guy. My family gives me a bunch of BS. I have a whiteboard at home. I put stuff up. The boys like, Dad, another whiteboard session. That's how I think. CAG War. You want to increase CAG, decrease war, which I think is funny. Decrease war. It makes sense. But CAG is you want to increase every day kindness, appreciation, and gratitude. Every day. Because you feel good. The hairs on the back of my neck stand up now saying it. Can't do it enough. Every day. Kindness, appreciation, and gratitude. With everybody you come in touch with. The chemistry change in you doing that, fantastic. War, decrease it. Worry, anxiety, and regret. We spend a lot of time worrying. We spend a lot of time with high anxiety. And we're constantly regretting things we did in the past. Could I have been closer to my father during the time he was around? You betcha. Do I regret it? You bet I do. But I'm not going to dwell on it. I'm not going to let it shape my life. I'm going to call it out for what it is. I could be a little sad with it. That's okay. I'm better for it now because I get it. So, CAG, increase that. War, decrease those. So I looked up something the other day and my wife said, yeah, I think this is true. I didn't get it, but it was called anticipatory anxiety. I guess it's a disorder. She goes, I think you have that. I said, I don't know. I don't see somebody to figure out what I have and what I don't have. Maybe I should, but it makes sense. In my day, though, I called that like being prepared and planning. There's some anxiousness with making sure things are in place for the next steps. Some contingency approaches so you're ready for anything that happens. Planning, preparing, and then executing. PPE, I used to put up on the whiteboard. It drove my kids batty, but they remember it. So decrease those 3 at all costs and increase the other 3. And life really finds an open space for you to grow and thrive and be yourself. And if you can align yourself, your true self, with some kind of work that is connected, doesn't mean you have to love your work. You never love work. Every day's busy. that's connected, then you...
But aren't there books that say, find what you love and you'll never work a day in your...
I'm not a big fan of that. Find yourself and do what you love doing. And in the midst of all that, you'll work. And it would be better. I don't think a lot of folks are spending enough time with that. So I hate the phrase, but self-discovery, you know. But it's taken me a long time to do it.
It's important, though, to take that time to look in the mirror, look at yourself, and really learn. Because, like I said, yes, is every job or is a job ever going to be 100% love? No, there's no utopia.
Yeah.
But you can decrease your level of anxiety with your work.
Yeah.
If you know your purpose and you know what drives you, and maybe find something that better aligns with what's important to you.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. And it takes time. There's more available now, though, to learn about what we're talking about than there ever has been. So anybody getting out, transitioning from law enforcement or military, hundreds have come before you. Hundreds are going to follow you. And you have access to more stuff now to help figure out that way ahead. Not just what to dress, how to write the resume, how to do an elevator pitch. There's wonderful resources. So it's an exciting time for those getting out, but it's also an unnerving time because AI is coming in and scaring the living bejesus out of everybody. What should they do? Because most stuff is going to be done by AI, they say. Find out who you are and do what's best for you and what you're aligned with. AI is not human. We still need humans. I saw something the other day that said there's business to business, B2B. They say what's going to be important in the future is F to F, face to face. Because it's not words coming from a generated machine of the world's information. There's a human component. That's going to be an important element in the future.
Well, I think that what's driving that is you look at some of these videos now that are being created with AI.
Oh, I know.
And what I think is going to drive the face-to-face is, in a weird way, validation and authentication.
Yeah.
People are going to we're going to go back to analog. I need to be face-to-face with you because I need to make sure what's being said is actually coming out of your mouth.
This is legit. I watched some dogs the other day jump off of diving boards and doing somersaults and the twists and turns of professional divers at the Olympics. And it looked like they were actually there doing that. I laughed so hard. I showed it to my family. Look at this. Like, that can't be real. I said, it's not real. My son, that's AI, Dad. Of course it is. But look at how authentic that looks. So funny. That's humorous. People are losing their jobs because their jobs are being taken over by AI. They have to ask themselves, during this transition, then what do I do? I was accounting before, and now it's being done completely by automation and AI. Maybe I better take a harder look at where I can use my skill sets and where I should be working. But you got to look internal first, I think.
With several guests having gone down or ventured into starting their own nonprofits, from your advice working in the nonprofit space, because one of the things you mentioned, yes, there are a lot of nonprofits and they increase each day. I'm still of the mindset, though, that if you see a space that's missing a component and you are driven to want to get into it, go for it. But what advice would you have for somebody trying to get into a space on their own or starting that?
That's a great question. If the person is operating from a place of goodness and righteousness, not just trying to make money, I do think there's a small element of the NPOs, the small ones, that realize through the tax codes they can create a 501c3. They can get a number of people to be board members. Once they get their number that they're an approved nonprofit in the eyes of the IRS, they can create a website and they can request money to serve their cause. Tactically, it's doable. easily. If they're genuine and they have found a space that they believe needs some services or care, and they create that mechanism for that space, I say go for it. You can do a website yourself, or you can find somebody to help you manage that. There's an easy way to find out how to do the accounting. But it has to be legitimate, because I think there's a few bad apples in this giant bucket of good apples that said, let me get my wife, my mom, and my cousin to be the board members. We're going to raise money to provide X to this community, and the website's great and very appealing, and people donate. And then the bookkeeping isn't that good, and they've received a lot of money, but no one's there to audit them because there's a lot of them out there. If they're insistent on starting their own nonprofit, if it's really legitimate and there's a space there, be totally transparent and go for it. I'm of the opinion in the spaces where it's really crowded, consolidation is the future. So if there's a couple nonprofits that are serving transitioning special operators, maybe take a hard look at bringing them together and doing more. Get sporty, because board members have passionate ownership of those organizations. And to bring boards together to agree to that is complicated. The executive directors or the CEOs are usually totally in agreement that, yes, a merge would be great because we could do more programs, greater reach, more specificity on what they really need, and we'd have a better fundraising apparatus. That makes total sense. Bringing board members together gets sticky. They don't want to give up ownership sometimes. And I get that. It's parochial. They might have been one of the founders, and they've started the thing. So I think there's a need. I serve on a couple boards. I've sat on a number of boards. I sat on Mount Soledad's board here for 6 years in San Diego. A wonderful group, wonderful people doing super stuff now. Sat on the Navy Supply Corps Foundation board for 6 years, helped them navigate their giving to the Supply Corps officer community and their families. Been around for many, many years. Fantastic, but small. It's a niche thing. And then I sit now on the board of the SUP Veterans. It's a water-based thing. I love it. And we have retreats where we send veterans to Punta Mita down in Mexico, where they spend a week with professional surfers and other veterans. And they learn the art of stand-up surfing by these professional surfers, and they're fantastic. And it's less about surfing and stand-up surfing and more about bringing together these veterans who have been away for a while and probably missed the tribe, missed the team, and getting reacquainted again in a safe place is fun. And they've loved it. And now there's a network of folks who have done them for 7 years, and they love it. But it's small. There's One More Wave in San Diego. I advise them. I know Rob Garnett very well. What he does in One More Wave, which is around the country, and Hawaii too. I know it's part of our country, but they bring together vets and active duty folks to spend time in the water. And they build boards for those who have some handicap need. So they can get in the water and they can surf. Tremendous touch point for vets who like the water and camaraderie and bringing them together. They meet once a month. Those two are in similar spaces, but they're their own nonprofits. I'm an advocate of take a few of these, bundle them together, and do more of it, as opposed to starting another one. Somebody will say, hey, man, I could start a surf club at the surf parks that are now opening. Let's have a surf club for veterans at the surf parks. I mean, that's great, but you're going to have to start from scratch when you already have these organizations that are doing very close to what you're thinking of doing. Take your talents and energy and bring it together. If that makes any sense.
No, it makes complete sense. Because, like I said, my caveat is if for whatever reason you see that there is a similar group, but there's a niche that they're not offering that you really want to dive into.
There's always a niche that's not being met because the nonprofit sectors are usually limited based on funding.
But the bigger thing is like you mentioned, is geographically. Yeah. It be the catalyst in your geographic area to bring something similar. If I've had Rob on the podcast.
Have you? Rob's such a great guy.
What One More Wave is doing is amazing and getting the disabled vets back out on the water. But they are limited, and so if there is, I'm not saying that they're looking to onboard another group, but I'm saying if you're up in New Hampshire, I think New Hampshire's got shoreline. But what I'm saying is if you're somewhere and you feel a draw to that, like I said, don't reinvent the wheel. If there's already somebody doing exactly what you want to do, get involved.
Contact them. You could be the arm in the Northeast for them. Absolutely. There's a number of other ways to serve, fulfill your personal mission, to be involved with that cause in the nonprofit space without creating a new nonprofit, without a doubt. A lot of folks out there, the nonprofit space is crowded, especially for veterans. I don't know what it's like for the first responders world. I know there's a few out there, but I don't know them in detail. I don't know if it's a crowded space or not. The veteran space is a very crowded space in the nonprofit world.
I think it's
especially
one of those
transitions.
I think it's one of those things you don't really realize how deep the pool is until you dive in.
Yeah.
When you're on the periphery and you kind of know that there's a pool over there, but then all of a sudden you dive in, you're like, "Whoa, this is deeper than I thought."
Yeah, it's bigger. Yeah.
Going back to your comment about not being an entrepreneur at heart, but now having created the
government assessments.
Yeah. What advice would you give for somebody wanting to? They find something that they're passionate about and they want to transition it to a business. Anything that you've learned?
Yes, have the right partners. So I've got 2 partners who were in that space for 25 years. And it's really a partnership between the mechanism I created and assessments 24/7. Mine's government assessments. And they've been doing it for 25 years. They know these assessments. They have a database of 35 million different assessments that have been done with components underneath all of them of info. And we've just launched or I should say they've just launched, I can use it, but an closed loop AI system. So you take an assessment and it gives you a report back on you. And you can then type into the closed loop AI, how do I manage what I'd like to do with this determination of me under the DISC assessment? It spits out all the stuff you need to know. They've got a database of 25 years worth of millions of people taking assessments and all the components of that. So greater minds have pulled that together. I've seen it. It's brilliant. Everything is AI these days. I was thinking there's one of these kids' cartoons from many years ago where they said everything is voice activated these days. I think it was Cars in the Cars movie. Well, everything is AI these days. So
we'll go back to the kid who was reading an original Dick Tracy comic book, and he was talking into his watch.
Yeah.
Bring him fast forward to 2025.
Yeah. And now the watches can monitor all your systems to tell you how healthy you are or are not and where you need to make changes. Crazy. So for somebody who's thinking of the entrepreneur world, I am not an entrepreneur. My partners are. They know the details of this thing inside and out. I'm the passionate one behind placing this capability in front of DOD and the VA. And I'm trying to figure that out. I didn't expect the new administration to come in and sort of turn government upside down in D.C. And they're doing a deep house cleaning, the Doge thing. I'm in no position to say good, bad, right, or wrong. It's a thing. So trying to bring a new capability into government and get them to spend money on it right now is probably not the best time. But I didn't do it to make a lot of money. I'm still rolling the thing out to make it available because I think it's right. And the more people that take these, they realize there's something here. And maybe the lights will go on and there'll be opportunity for growth within the VA and DOD to incorporate this kind of thing into TAPS and into the VA centers. And if that happens, the people that take them will benefit. And that's what I think is right. I don't get a salary. I don't have any benefits from this thing. I'm a founder on paper. It's great to have created that. It was fun to create a company that way. It was a good education for me. If we sold some assessments to government at any level, great. If we help service members, fantastic. Or first responders. I've got somebody looking at that right now. They're like, Bill, you could put this in a number of things. First responders who get out, some of them really have some need to navigate that way ahead. This can give them an assessment of themselves for purposes of maybe getting down a more clear path. Perfect. So I will keep advocating for that and pushing that out there based on sort of this journey of 60 years. So it's been a long journey, but it's still a young journey, if you stay at it.
Never get off the journey.
You never get off the journey, yeah.
For our generation, and you've already mentioned it, 9/11 was such a pivotal moment. And it's crazy to think that there are actually kids who could be serving today who weren't even alive during that for 9/11. So it's become our Pearl Harbor, so to speak.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Pentagon. Were you at the Pentagon on 9/11? Were you assigned there?
Well, it's funny you ask. I was assigned there in paper, but I was a student at American University. I lived right across the street from the Pentagon. In the mornings, I would drive my car across Route 27 next to the Pentagon over a bridge to row on the river there. It was my exercise. I was driving past the bridge on the phone with a friend in Arlington, a military buddy, who was talking about New York City. And while we were talking, he said, Bill, my house just shook. He's not far from the Pentagon. And I said, wow, the truck shook too. And I pulled over and looked behind me, and there was a huge plume of smoke coming out of the Pentagon. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Route 27 is a one-way road into D.C. Can't make a U-turn on this thing. So I went over the bridge, and the bridge is all closed. So I spent the next 12 hours at American University in a community center watching the younger kids, undergrad kids, and some graduate students digest this thing of 9/11. I was older. I was a mid-career guy. They couldn't have been my kids, but they were a lot younger than I was. I sat back. I couldn't get back to Virginia. I thought, wow, look at this. I mean, I'm an international guy. I've lived a lot abroad. I've studied a lot of that stuff. I was studying international communications at American University is a wonderful school with the School of International Service, a lot of foreigners. So I sat there and I absorbed how these kids were absorbing this tragedy and this act. Fascinating to watch that. And then once the bridges were opened, I drove back. And I came back, I went right by the Pentagon. And there it was, incinerated on that one side. And just, holy moly, and pulled into my apartment complex. Went upstairs, still sort of numb. I had relatives that live in Manhattan. And they were right next door to the World Trade Centers. Fortunately, their building was unscathed. They're only a few blocks away, but total disaster for them. I called them and said, hey, my best wishes are with you and your city. The same person who fired me many years ago. Always take the high road. You don't get lost taking the high road. So I was there. So a couple days later, when we could get back in the building, I went in and talked to the person I'd worked for, an admiral, and said, do you want me to cancel school and I can come back to work and work here or wherever you need us to work? He said, nope, this is going to be a very long fight. I would appreciate it if you finish school. It's a 1-year program. Finish school and be ready to jump in when you're done. And I said, okay, I'll do that. So it was a sort of an awkward year to be in academia when the entire military complex was, one, hit hard. The country was hit hard. And now it was building for like what the next steps were. And I was studying like communication statistics, which I did okay in. And I learned, but I was like, I shouldn't be here at American University. I should be in uniform working somewhere. This man was patient. He said, hold off. This is not going to end tomorrow. We're going to be fighting this for a long time. Best thing he told me. So finished up my schoolwork and jumped into the Pentagon and started working there to help them with stuff and moved forward from there.
Because you had a unique perspective. You came in right at the tail end of what most would call peacetime. Mm-hmm. You were in for the cup of coffee that was the Gulf War.
Yep.
And then this experience for you in the Navy, how much different was it September 12th? I know you were in school, so you had another year to go, but
no, but I could sense a difference immediately. I mean, I spent time in the Middle East during the Gulf War, and night and day. It was a real calibrator for the country, I think.
I'd asked you earlier if there was ever a point where it was a struggle to make it till 20. On the flip side, something that catastrophic, was it a drive to stay in?
I don't think I ever looked at it that way. I was already a seasoned junior senior officer, if that makes any sense, and I knew I had a place and a future in doing certain things in the Navy. So I wasn't at that juncture anymore where like I should stay in or get out. I was beyond that stage, and I liked the path I had to not get to 20, but the path I was on was important to me. I think it was relevant and meaningful. So I was already in that groove. So I wasn't thinking time to get out. No, I should stay in now. I was like, well, how can I be most effective while I'm in? What can I do? And I was a staff guy though. So I'm not commanding a ship, a submarine or squadron or flying something or tactically doing anything. It was the long hours of staff work to keep the mechanism going in the field you're in. I spent 4 tours in D.C. and a lot of time abroad, so I know the D.C. Mechanism really well. And I'm glad I raised, some will probably say, you got to be kidding me. I'm glad I raised our kids out here because we could have stayed in Washington, D.C. area and raised them there. But now I look back on things from a wellness perspective. It's easier for us to be well here in Southern California than in other places in the country if you've got yourself in check, at my age anyway.
I think we definitely take it for granted what we have here in Southern California. Yeah. People complain about the overpopulation, the congestion, and true, it's an issue.
Cost of living.
But man, just the day-to-day.
Yeah, we're blessed. We're really blessed in that regard. And yeah. So we left that. We go back occasionally, see relatives, see friends. It's a wonderful, exciting town, that's for sure. Regardless of who's in the, Oval Office, doesn't matter. I've served for a number of different presidents. I served 28 years. So I've got certificates from all of them, and they're the commander in chief. So for us, it's very clear. It's not a political thing. It's a chain of command thing. And it's an exciting town. If my boys grow up and they say, hey, Dad, I want to, in my profession, I want to work out of D.C., I say, go do it because it's a young professional town, predominantly a white-collar town because it's policy making and financial stuff. And a lot of professionals running around having fun while they're working too, So that can be heady. Is it an old person's town? If you have the right position, it is because it's a town of positional authority. So I like staying younger in San Diego or Southern California.
Better surfing in San Diego.
There's wonderful surfing here, much better than people really even say there is. On the way up today, I was driving. I said, hey, Robert, why don't we get bathing suits and bring them with us? Because when we finish here, let's just go directly west. There'll be some traffic. We'll hit the beach. We can go swimming. Dad, I don't want to go swimming. I don't want to let's just do one thing today, not 10 things. Fair enough, but that's where my heart is, right? And we're surrounded by such great geography in Southern California. An old mentor, one of my father's colleagues, had mentioned, when it's time for you to retire, son, retire in a place where they've got good capability for veterans. Not because you need health and welfare care in a hospital, but because you want the cultural touch points to just remind you of where you came from, and you'll feel good about that. I was young. I thought, wow, great advice, but I don't know if I get it. And boy, did he hit the nail on the head. Because, I go to Lifeguard on a Navy base in San Diego. I see young service members. I see retirees. I see folks trying to get certified to work in the Navy in an operational position in the water. So they're training there. I see the civilians that serve in the MWR world, morale, welfare, and rec world, on a base. and all of them are outstanding. And they're up. Their attitudes are great. They're in the gyms. They're together. The young ones are having fun. And they come from all over the country. And their spirits are great. Their energy is right. They're talented in all the different things they're doing. And I observe this. I'm like, wow, if there was ever a way for me to stay young, it's to keep lifeguarding and be surrounded by all this. Maybe I'm being selfish, right? But it's awesome. We have that in San Diego. If I'd retired in, I don't know, Iowa somewhere, I'd be maybe saying, God, I'm missing the military. I want to go see my buddies, or I would like to go watch a ship go to sea or come back to sea or something. We don't have that problem here, right? So we're definitely pretty blessed.
I think that's one of the, I'll loosely call it a mistake. I think there's men and women who get the picturesque idea of a given geographic location in their mind. I want to retire there.
Yeah.
And they don't put enough time and research into there before they just pack up lock, stock, and barrel and move. And then they get there and like, ooh, wait a minute.
Yeah. And it usually requires another move. Moves aren't easy. They're costly. It's a transition. It comes with some emotional capital. So you got to choose wisely. I think the younger generation is a lot more flexible, a lot more nimble. But with all the choices they have afforded to them, I think they can be a little indecisive on identifying an X and then moving towards it, because they might not know who they really are. This can confuse you very quickly. I've watched it confuse my boys. There's so much out there. So screen time disciplines are important. Stay healthy and well in mind, spirit, and body. Be active, mobile, social. Meet people and be out in their face-to-face is going to be more important than ever. And then navigate your transitions. For my boys, transitions of life. For veterans, stepping out of one culture that you're never going to totally be detached of into another one. And if it's not the right fit, that's okay. You'll find a different one. But if you're doing it with knowledge of who you are, more prone for greater success than if you haven't done that deep dive.
You had the proverbial rug kind of pulled out from underneath your feet at 28. Were you planning a transition at that point? Were you thinking about it? And when were you looking? Had everything gone according to plan? You mentioned potentially taking another duty assignment.
They offered up some nice duty assignments,
Did you have an exit date, though, in your mind at that point?
No, I didn't. No, I never had an exit plan. I just took jobs where I went and I found good meaning, and I provided, I think, good services and support. And each tour I had was satisfying professionally and personally, working for great commanders on great staffs with great teammates, and a mission that I thought was important. And I enjoyed each one. So I never really said, okay, honey, about this year, we're going to punch. Because each one offered up something new and exciting. I was always learning. And if I'm learning, I'm good. The mission stuff was there. I was serving. So as I continued to learn, I was great. The NSW community was a very steep learning curve. You either stay there and assist and work and support them, or they realize you're not a good fit and your departure happens pretty quickly. For the right reasons. Nothing bad. So I assimilated, and they appreciated, and we built a good partnership as a person on the staff, and worked for a number of admirals, worked on a big staff, and added my professional expertise on things. And extended for a year so I could help them find the right person to follow me. So you had those graces as a senior officer. I'm like, who are you all thinking of bringing in here? Because this place is special. It's even in its name. So make sure you don't bring in the wrong person, because you bring in the wrong person, it might not work out, and then you have to detail somebody else in. You don't want to do it twice. So I extended for a year. That got me from 27 to 28 years. I was like, what do we do after we leave here? And then I realized, wow, I'm not going to learn anything new back east. It'd be nice to go to some different places back east. I know them all. I'd learned incredible stuff in NSW. I said, babe, I've got a new mindset of how to live. I say we just plant ourselves here and use that as part of our what do they call it? Rucksack, stuff you have in your rucksack. The tool in the toolbox. Let's stay here. She loved it. She's very happy here. So, and the boys grew up here, and they're good boys, and they're fun and smart and engaging and energetic. And despite COVID, everything COVID did from a kid's perspective. So, no, I didn't have a plan to exit when I did. I just knew that it wouldn't meet the criteria when I go back. And from what that individual told me, you don't leave a place you really like and then hope to go back there when you retire, because it will change when you get there, if you can get back there, and nothing gets cheaper. So we bought a home in 2004 in San Diego, rented it out while we were not there. When we came back, we lived in it. We've bounced around now to a different home, but he was so right about that. If you like it, stay and make it work. And San Diego's airport is easy to come and go. And the town is very special. It's a one-way runway town, though. So the city is only so big. The county is really thriving and big and beautiful. And it's just south of you, because you guys are north.
Mm-hmm. For the comparison aspect, as we start to wrap this up, the young man with the long hair going into OCS,
yeah,
and maybe not the most squared away, to the man who walked out after 28 years, how was that transition back to being a civilian for you?
Great question. I probably over-engineered it. TAP class, a couple other transition courses, really staffing it to do it right. No time on self, all the tactics. And then, through luck, an individual approached me and helped me create a new way ahead. I was more disciplined in how to make that transition than I was before. Before, I was throwing myself into something I knew culturally, based on observations of my father and his contemporaries, and good people, good mission, adventure. Great framework. So I felt safe jumping into that. Jumping out, I had a retirement under my belt, so there was a good sense of ease there. I wasn't like losing a job and I had no income saved up. I mean, we were smart about how we managed finances over many years. Not very wealthy by no means, but in a good place. So we stepped out with the disciplines to find work. And I interviewed at different places, and it was awkward. I think if I would have taken a position in a suit, it could have been short-lived. Because I would have said after 6 months or a year, I just don't know. Or they might have said they don't know. We part ways. Who knows? But this opportunity presented itself, and I was able to maintain my independence, some freedom, autonomy to make the right decisions that I felt were the important ones to address, a board that trusted me. And I earned their trust. And then we opened up everything else. We created the right things, shaped the team even more, and got us through COVID. We stayed alive in COVID. A lot of places shut down. We stayed alive and continued to serve, even though public stuff was very hard to do. Bringing families together was delicate, but we got through that. So independence, daily schedule. I wasn't in a corporate setting anymore. I was setting my own corporate tone, and that felt good. Something I'd never done before. So experimented with that. I thought it was going to go 3 years, maybe a tour. It went 7. And somebody called and said, the other organization is looking for somebody. Why don't you apply? And I did, and didn't tell my board. And then when I was offered a position, I had to call the chairman and said, hey, I've got some interesting news. He said, well, we knew it was only a matter of time because we've talked about it with you at board meetings. Like, what's your long-term view? What do you think how long you think you're going to be here? I said, I don't know, but I do need to keep an eye out there of what's going on. In all transparency is your friend. Maybe not in poker, but it is in this career world we're in. And I told him I'm always keeping my eye out there because I have to take care of my family. If there's something that comes along that would really benefit me from a learning perspective and income perspective, I'd be foolish not to look at it. But it has to align with me and the mission. So I'm not going to be jumping ship to go to some corporate America position, which is what a lot of my contemporaries have done. Have gone to the government defense industry sector in D.C., director of communications position in some field or some office is huge, and they've done well. They're not surfing in the morning early. The lifestyle back there is very different than it is out here. So, yeah, it was an interesting transition, but the right one. Big risks. The thing could have folded within a year, and my wife and I were prepared for that. If it folds, what do? Well, keep applying for regular jobs. So we took a step out for something unconventional. It reshaped me. And I think that was the beginning of me. I hate to say me a lot.
But it's an important component.
Yeah, but when I think it allowed me to look more internally. I'm like, okay, what is it that I want to do, right? Not just build wooden airplanes at home in my garage at night or models. Watercolor painting. I like to paint. When I was young, I might take that up again. Let's take a little bit of an internal look. And my wife has been a big part of that journey, helping me sort of embrace that and challenging me on things where appropriate to, why don't you look into that further, And so it wasn't by design. It's amazing how many of these things were not by design, but by sort of accepting the new opportunity. So veterans coming out, I see them with lots of opportunities. Reduce the fear, reduce the anxiety and the worry, maybe some regret, and embrace kindness and appreciation and gratitude. Gratitude to serve, appreciation for your teammates. That focus really, I think, creates an energy that is not only healthy for you, it's very appealing to others. And when other people are happy in your presence, it's amazing what kinds of things open up. So I don't know where they teach that. They don't. Maybe they do in some college psychology courses or something. But it seems to resonate with me.
Historically, never been taught in the veteran or first responder world.
Yeah. I'd like to get that DISC assessment series into those two places. I think people would benefit from it. So I got to figure out how to do that. Sort of a good older guy experiment, And if it takes off and kids benefit from it, great. If it doesn't, it's been a hell of a education for me on the value of that kind of thing. Maybe my boys will benefit from it.
You've given a lot of nuggets of wisdom. Any last pieces that you want to make sure get out there? I almost kind of feel like, in a weird way, I just need to say, all right, stop, because
I was going to say, no, I don't. I wanted to thank you for the opportunity. I was introduced to you by Bart, who I'm a big fan of. I think we're brothers from another mother. Bart is fantastic. He's a wonderful human being. His energy is so super. And otherwise, I wouldn't have done this. I wouldn't have sought it out myself to do a podcast. I trust Bart, and his instincts were absolutely right on. So I'm sort of humbled that I did it and had a chance to meet you, Paul, because it's been fantastic to learn and chat with you about this. It's an important topic, and a lot of people are talking about it, but maybe there's a nugget or two out there that we've talked about that will resonate with somebody.
Well, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing your story and the information that you presented. I wish you all the best going forward.
Thank you very much.
As always, thank you for listening or watching the episode. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to reach out on social media or send me an email. The links are all in the show notes. I'd love to hear from you. Also, if you're not already, please follow the podcast on whatever platform you get your podcasts. You can also subscribe on YouTube. And if you would, please leave me a rating. Ratings do two things. You can tell me what I need to fix or improve, and the more ratings also gets the podcast recommended to more people. Another ask, please share the podcast with anyone you think could benefit from and enjoy it. And last, don't forget, sign up for the newsletter.